Neil, I'll pass it over to you. Neil, thank you so much for joining. I know you got a lot to be able to share on this. Neil, go ahead and give a brief introduction for yourself and tell us a little bit about spiritual wisdom of plant medicines from your perspective. Welcome, dude.
Thanks, bro. There's a lot to go over in regards to this, and so many different facets to where I want to go. But first of all, hello everybody. My name is Neil, and I'm the founder of Portal to Ascension. And you can find me on portaltoascension.org, on YouTube and other platforms. And you can find me as a conscious rapper, spoken word artist at I_am_resonance on Instagram. I've been doing plant medicine. I'm a huge advocate for plant medicine. It's actually, I would say that there are two things that have shifted my life, and I went from depression and like hating myself to loving myself purely. And it would be Vipassana, which is a 10-day silent meditation retreat that I went to like 6 times. That was actually more powerful than plant medicine ceremonies I've ever been on. It was just like in darkness for that long. And then definitely plant medicine. Ayahuasca has been a great, benefit. Has been really beneficial to me. And then also I have, you know, I've practiced with DMT and combo and magic mushrooms. Mushrooms has been with me since I was 18. So just to kind of give you like kind of a story, because I really want to go into speaking about the experiences. I started doing my psychedelics for the first time when I was 18. I went into college, and I met a bunch of people from all over the world. We started listening to like psychedelic rock, Tool, and other bands. And so I started doing mushrooms, right? Because like it's what they were talking about. But for the first few years, good, like I don't know, like 5 to 6 years, I was doing mushrooms like 20 times a year, but I didn't know that it was a spiritual thing that I was doing. I was going to Vegas, doing mushrooms, throwing it in burritos. I was like having a great time on mushrooms, but I was actually getting a lot of spiritual awareness that I didn't realize until later. I actually began writing poetry and doing what I do now, which is spoken word art and rapping when I was taking mushrooms, because I was taking mushrooms and getting all these downloads from like different storylines of extraterrestrials, and I didn't hadn't researched any of this at that point. So this is in year 2000, and then I began writing poetry on these different beings and quantum realities and metaphysics and black holes, and I actually ended up researching my own keywords and my own poetry around 2003 2004, and started realizing that a lot of the stuff that I was actually like writing on mushrooms had some component of truth when it comes to like learning about our ancient history. I didn't take ayahuasca. My first time I think that I did ayahuasca was about 10 years ago, and at this point I've done it 11 times. The first few times I did it was actually in the U.S. in Temecula, which was really uncomfortable, because we were out in the desert, and basically we just had a blanket and a sleeping bag, and we just did it out there on the hard surface. And my wife was actually like accidentally went on top of an ant hill, so she was being bit by ants all night while she was on ayahuasca. That was one of our first experiences, and I never actually had any tangible experience the first maybe 2 or 3 times I did it. At first I was like, oh, why? I was wondering why did everybody else have an experience and I didn't. And then after the second time, I had a download come to me, no like tangible like experience where I was seeing things or feeling certain things, but the download was that as I'm ingesting this medicine, that it's basically peeling back layers, and the more I take it, the more the layers will peel back, and eventually the experiences that may result in even more healing or alignment would come to me. So it took around, I think it was my sixth journey on ayahuasca in Peru, in the jungle, in the Amazon jungle, when we were actually at a 14-day ayahuasca retreat where we did plant medicine 4 times. On the sixth time, so I'd already been there, and we did 3 journeys. And for those 3 journeys in the jungle, the only thing that was happening to me was, and just to talk on about the range of different experiences, because some people talked about like the waves and everything like that, but what really happened to me wasn't anything visual or something that was expanding my consciousness or my mind in that moment that I could tangibly feel. What happened was I was channeling all these types of yoga moves. I was doing, like, you've ever heard of rolfing? I was rolfing myself. I was channeling yoga moves, and I was, believe it or not, I was literally humping the ground with like for like hours, where, like, just to give you an example, I was laying flat on the ground, right, like this happened in 4 or 5 different journeys, and I would just like boom, 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 just like my whole pelvis would come up and smack the ground. I was just like just channeling this energy, And after a few times of this happening, I decided to like ask ayahuasca to stop because I was still conscious in my mind. I wasn't completely gone. I was like letting this happen to my body, but I was still aware. So in that moment, I had a thought to myself. I'm like, well, something is happening here. I feel like I'm exerting trauma into the ground for somehow, and I should let it happen. But at the same time, my conscious mind was like, whoa, you've been doing this for at least 3 hours. You're going to be in pain tomorrow. So I said to ayahuasca, I'm like, I said, should I take a break? And then as soon as I said that, it stopped. I was completely, everything was still, everything was normal. I got up, I drank water, I coughed, I like cleansed myself, and then I went down, and then I just relaxed, and it just took over again. And that happened up until my sixth time, which is my third experience in Peru. And then on my fourth experience, the last experience in Peru, midway into the journey, all of a sudden I started seeing something. So I'd done 6 journeys not seeing anything. And in the time that I saw something, the first thing that I saw was something that I'd actually been told in my first journey, was that a lot of times some people see a serpent. And if you see a serpent, the shaman, she actually told me that go inside of the serpent's mouth. You don't know where you'll end up. But if you see like a snake coming up to you and you don't want to actually engage with the snake, just go ahead and say, I'm not ready. So I did that on my first ever ayahuasca journey. I saw an apparition of a snake. I said, I'm not ready. And then it took 6 journeys before I ever saw anything again. Then on my sixth journey, I saw the snake, and this is over a period of like 4, 5 years, right? So I saw the snake come again, and this time I didn't say I didn't want to see you, and I went into the snake's mouth, and I went into this whole realm of wormholes and butterflies and all these things happening, and just craziness. A lot of like my own demons were coming out of me, and I was seeing it. It was kind of a scary experience. And then right at the end of my like seventh ayahuasca journey, right, the first journey that I ever had visuals, within, I would say like within the last 5 minutes, I don't even know, but I had, all of a sudden, all of the craziness and the chaos I saw just cleared away from my eyes, and I saw like a utopia. And then I heard the word Neil, right? And I'd never heard a voice before, because a lot of people say they hear voices, and I know people that have had interactions with like ETs and having conversations. I know a friend of mine that sat with his dad that passed away, that was really like not a good dad to him, and he had a whole conversation for multiple hours. So I was knew that this whole thing about like having someone talk to you is possible, and ayahuasca tangibly actually physically speaks to a lot of people, and they have conversations with it. So on the seventh journey, right at the end, after this all this craziness and 7 journeys of trying to get to some place, I saw this utopia, I heard my name, and then I woke up. And that was my last journey in Peru. And then fast forward a couple of years later, I went to Rhythmia in Costa Rica, which was 2 years ago now, and we did. I think there was 4 journeys over there as well. And I would say that my journeys in Rhythmia and Peru were probably the most life changing ones I've ever had. Earlier that year, I had gone to Vipassana, where I had a really like epic experience where I literally shifted from like, there was this kind of like buzzing in my head and like that chatter in my head, and then all of a sudden it just switched off. So when I went to Rhythmia, I was just reinforcing kind of what I had in that experience there, and I went from just being a really unpresent person and kind of not happy with myself, which is just my default setting was love for myself. But a lesson that I get every single time I really go and do any psychedelic is something that many of us have already touched on here, is that it's not there to heal you per se, it's here to show you the way. So the science behind it is what I really love. And I just did an all day 10-hour conference called Psychedelic Awareness and Plant Medicine online conference on December 12th of last year. It was the first annual, and I'm going to be doing quite a few. There's going to be a plant medicine series of workshops every month on our website, where we're doing like microdose integration ceremonies, things like that. And so, in my experience, I realized that what plant medicine does, or let's specifically talk about ayahuasca, they've hooked people up to EEG machines, right? They've kind of taken a look at what your brain looks like before you do ayahuasca and afterwards. And something that we've seen that happens with DMT and ayahuasca, or anything that has a high concentration of DMT, is the complete rewiring of the neurosynaptic connectors in your brain. So what happens over like your whole entire life is you do something the same way over and over and over again, and then it calcifies into that specific habit or thought form. So a lot of positive things, are created that way, but also a lot of negative things. So when you do, um, when you do ayahuasca, there's this whole thing that happens where the calcification that has created the synaptic connections that make you think that these are the ways that you look at the world and the ways you carry yourself out kind of like unwind, and then you have the ability afterwards to rewire your brain in whatever way you want. And what I've noticed is that a lot of things that I thought were holding me back, I don't feel that way after I've had these experiences. And then the work after that really is if you're going to continue doing it, because it shows you the way and what you need to do, and then afterwards you got to go do it. Sometimes I've had journeys on different types of plants, and the what I've learned is, oh my God, I need to go sit down with this person and really talk and express how I feel. Right. So it's not healing it for me in that moment, but it's giving me the tools and the communication ability to go ahead and like basically the drive and the will to go ahead and make an actual change in my life. And many times after plant medicine, especially mushrooms, I've had the nerve the next day or the days after to go and have conversations that were maybe like a little more difficult that have led to healing. So I just want to leave it on this just to add a little more here, is that the reason why I'm doing a lot of events on plant medicine on our platform right now is that there's this huge decriminalization going on across the world, or across the US especially, in regards to plant medicine. In 2019, 100 cities in the US had it on their ballots to decriminalize magic mushrooms. About 10 of them had it on their ballot to vote for the decriminalization of all psychedelic naturally occurring plants and mushrooms. So right now in the U.S., Oakland, Denver, Chicago have all decriminalized mushrooms, so you can't get in trouble for mushrooms. Santa Cruz and a couple other places have decriminalized all plant medicines, including ayahuasca, San Pedro, and then Oregon has decriminalized all drugs entirely. So right now there is a huge move in order to figure out the therapeutic potential of these plants, right? So the reason for this is that you cannot really overlook the fact that people are getting healing from these psychedelics. And because that is the case, it's taken a while for that to be so important that the pharmaceutical industry takes a back seat, but now it's happening. It's happened to the point that a lot of people that are veterans that had PTSD, those were the first line of people that are being healed from mushrooms and ayahuasca ceremonies in the US, that has now led to basically city councils having open meetings where veterans are coming saying, hey, you need to legalize this. So one of the things that we're doing now is we're working with the Psychosomatic Institute down here in LA that are actually training people, the first generation of people, to be therapists with psychedelics, with MDMA, with mushrooms, with ayahuasca. So it's happening. Even in Canada now, there's a company that is actually being publicly traded that is the first company that is going to be bottling microdose mushrooms around the world. So it's extremely important at this moment. And the reason why this is happening is because we're reducing the stigma around this whole thing entirely. Like, we really need to share the truth about what these things are, because what these sacred instruments are really tools that have been provided to us by the cosmos, universe, whoever, so that we can stay in alignment with the planet and have remembrance of who we are. Because I do feel that we're on this planet of amnesia, and we don't all come with all of our memories. And as Brandon had said earlier, when we do these psychedelics, it helps basically shift our alignment and our brain frequencies, and it opens us up to such a wider range of frequencies of experience, dimensions of experience, what we can see, what we can eat, what we can hear. So by opening us up to these other realities and dimensions, we're able to take wisdom from these realities and bring it back to this world right now.